Ardella, are you ready?
I am.
Cheryl?
Yep.
I am. We have no one on Zoom, Cheryl.
Not a bad time to be on.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, well, we'll call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. Roll call when ready.
Goss here, Bennett,
Here,
Glenn,
Here.
Pop,
Here.
Valmuth is absent.
Any changes or adjustments to the agenda? I realize we're short a member, but we'll ask because it's on the agenda. Any conflicts of interest this morning? I see no one on Zoom. Any public comment here in the township hall? No correspondence. So we'll move right into fire engine vendor select. Oh, there's one right there. So does anybody have a motion to start the program?
I'll make the motion to allow Chief Flynn to enter into a contract with CSI to build a new fire engine.
I'll second for discussion purposes.
did the motion include the cost?
I think that's under the financing part, but it could.
I'd like to raise one other question about the motion also. And that is in reference to page 72, which I know is the second topic, but I think it's germane that we need to at least keep in mind that the email from Miss Rachel Johnson at Chairland Electric Co-op, depending on financing, how we proceed, we'll get to that topic, obviously. But in her option one, she's very explicit that if the USDA loan application is made, we cannot sign the contract for the truck until we put in the application. So I just want to make sure that even if we grant permission on that, depending on the financing decision, may not be able to just immediately execute. So
Okay.
just
Well-
wanted,
I'm sorry.
so.
No, did you have a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's some other things. The motion is made, but it's not it doesn't allow him to enter into the contract immediately. I agree with Don's comments. I also did some research and, we have to have a resolution to spend the money and, that kind of money. And there's another MCL at a minimum, this one, I believe, that's going to apply. So the motion is made, but it's not for him to rush out, and which I know he won't
I
do.
wasn't suggesting he was gonna rush
Right,
out.
yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, it's not, right.
Okay. All right, very well. My point is made. So we have a motion and seconded. On page 3, for reference purposes, Chief, maybe you know, or perhaps member of the audience there. It talks about in the page 4, that the expected delivery of the bid apparatus is 365 days from receipt of the chassis, and the chassis is coming from Freightliner. So what is a range of time that adds to that 365? What's kind of the lead time on getting that chassis?
We anticipate that chassis is gonna arrive in second quarter.
If I may interrupt your train of thought, sir, I do apologize. Scott, can you introduce yourself? It is Scott, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Scott Patchen with CSI Emergency Apparatus.
Thank you.
I think our rough estimate is, 18 months. Yep.
Yeah, but it's triggered by the Freightliner. Yeah, so sure. So
And are you saying 18 months to get it done from delivery of the chassis? Or
No,
from
what
now?
we're saying is when the chassis shows up, it's out of here. And the reason that we have done that is pretty normal in the industry, with the conventional cab chassis, Freightliners, and Kenworths, and so on and so forth, is code was kind of an eye opener. Because the chassis delivery is going way out to the point that you were canceling orders on chassis, they can build them. So we kind of have to base it off of what the chassis. And this chassis is an allocation chassis, so it is actually on order as a slot. It has not been allocated a bid number yet. So until that time happens, we can't close this one, so. And that was the chassis that we picked for your bid, was the second quarter chassis. Like 18 to 22 months. From the time and time. Yeah, that's gonna be your bracket.
And then Chief, maybe you could just enlighten me, just on page 10, when there's a section on the warranty on the structural subframe, which I assume is pretty integral. Talks about the warranty being 15 years or 100,000 miles. I just don't know. How many miles do you put on a fire engine a year in this case?
Oh, I don't know, not very many.
Okay, so.
21-year-old.
Okay, so 15 years is really the realistic figure there. Okay.
And everyone has picked up that this will be our first plastic truck, right? What other one's plastic? It is. Wow. So now we have 2 plastic trucks.
Why does that make a difference? I don't know much about fire engines. Why does that make a difference?
So the body, well, I'll let Scott
Well, it
explain.
won't rust.
You nailed it, exactly. There are some advantages to the poly bodies. Biggest disadvantage of the expansion and contraction, got to be taken into consideration. Poly bodies have been out for 20 years in the industry. In Michigan, they are extremely popular for mainly corrosion characteristics. They're very repairable, and there's a lot of advantages. They don't bend, they scratch, they corrode. Paint adhesion foam can be obviously the sand surface and chemical and bond plastic better than any of the other stuff out there. So there's mechanical advantages on the electrical system side. You can't body ground your lights and stuff, they all have to be back to a frame ground, which gives you directly the electrical system on that body construction. They decided to give that a go after researching the first truck they bought from us. And then the second truck obviously was one of the third type of bodies and stuff. And then all the bodies at our stations, with the exception of the oldest truck in our station, my station is plastic. It's a polypropylene material. It's not like plastic Dixie cups or anything like that, but it is a form of plastic. It's not corrosive. one of the biggest advantages for a customer like us is the additional space you get. A traditional metal body with a poly tank inside needs considerable amount of space, so the actual poly body has an integrated tank in it. So it gives you that, sometimes like 200 or 300 extra gallons of water, or maybe, I don't know, 10 or 20, maybe 30 cubic feet of interior space. That's a huge bonus. Yeah, that was one. I failed to mention it, yes, exactly right.
So Chief, you mentioned we've had the pumper taker since 2019, which is of similar material, and you would state that there's no performance issues with the material.
And I was with Mr. Pop there, it was like, I was having a hard time going with the, old school metal fire truck too, but I was, that Scott, it took him a while to convince me. And I went out and looked at a couple of them, and we brought one over to, brought one over to Whitewater. It, I've been through that with a couple of different items, when they went, the fire service with poly tanks. Before they were always metal. I'm like, there's no way you can have a poly tank. That was like in the early 90s, late 90s. Everything changes and the technology increases, and you kind of keep up with it.
Is there a weight difference between the same truck if it were metal and poly?
Yes and no. The reason I say that is they say that the poly material is half the weight of the metals. The majority of apparatus is constructed out of aluminum, not stainless or steel. But the plastic bodies themselves comprise half inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch thick material. So we don't see any weight difference on the scale. Aluminum body fire truck, poly body fire truck.
No gas savings there then, or diesel
No,
savings?
we don't do much. with the industry, I can tell you that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Della, any other questions?
I don't have any.
So shall we move into discussion of financing then?
Well, we have a motion. Are we gonna vote on it?
I see the motion as something that is pending the financing, but, so in my opinion, we can vote on the motion. So that when the financing is figured out, which isn't gonna be today, unfortunately, that he can go ahead and,
Why would it
Sign a
not be
contract.
today, Cheryl?
well, because you gotta have a resolution for borrowing. I don't see any resolution on the table here. You're talking about applying for a grant, it looks like. So we don't have a decision on the grant. So the chief can't sign the contract. And I assume that that is, even with any other kind of financing, they're not gonna wanna finance something that we already went out and bought. Cause once he signs a contract, we bought it. So, like I say, I think we're here to discuss the financing, how we're gonna pay for this. We have some of it already. It looks like we wanna try and get a grant for some, maybe have to borrow some. I'm not exactly sure that's why I was interested in the timeline of this thing, because we've got 200,000 sitting there once some budgeted transfers are made. We've got 200,000 to put down on it. And then we've got the additional $500,000 fire special assessment district that's going to be levied soon. And we'll have those funds in the spring. Sometime we'll have those funds in the spring when tax collection's over. And so we'll have that money. And then we'll have that money also, that's what, another 131,000. So that gets us to 331,000. We can get a grant. That's some of the money. And then with the 18 to 22 months, trying to, where does that take us to? Well, 18 to 22 months from the time we sign the contract, we may even have 2 levies of the fire special assessment district before the final payment on this thing, because it looks like there's 3 different payments.
That's one of the options.
Yeah, and so, but certainly if it only winds up being, well, whatever, I don't want to get into that, but we have to have, a resolution on the table to actually enter into some borrowing. If that's the option that's chosen. So that all has to be investigated.
Sorry. Excuse the interruption.
When does the first half mils hit for this fire engine purchase that when does? first-
Tax bills go out December 1st.
So,
People start paying then.
so,
That's when it gets levied.
so to Cheryl's point, conceivably, we'd have approximately $131,000 in the first quarter of 2024, plus $131,000 in the first quarter of 2025. If the Freightliner chassis isn't received until second quarter of 2024, and then delivery is a year later, so we're talking second quarter of 2025. I think Cheryl's point is collecting why we could theoretically have $260,000
Plus the 2,000 we have,
plus the 200,000.
that's 460,000. And what, about 100,000 shy of the total price. So
we
if you could get the grant, that would lock in the total cost. If you could get this I think it was $100,000 grant possibly available.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's the one from Cherryland Electric. The full 360, the full amount is available from Cherryland, but we would have to complete a new application. They have about 100,000 currently, but most of that is spoken for in this year.
That's just a, interest-free loan.
Right. It's not a grant.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then that's borrowing.
We could put in for the 2%.
Mm,
No,
We didn't get a lot the last time we did that. No, we got
correct.
15,000.
So
Let me just ask, can I just ask Della one question? Do we get made whole on the fire special assessment district
Yes.
levy? Okay,
Yes.
so we are gonna get that 131,000.
yes.
It'll be levied December 1st, and then. of
The
course-
latest we get it'll be before April 1st, usually
Right.
it's somewhere in the middle of March when when the county treasurer actually closes it out, and makes us whole.
Yeah, so by April 1st of the next 2 years, we're gonna have this 131,000 based on our current
Projections.
based on our current taxable value. And so that might go up a little bit because that's not affected by Headley. So
So what you're saying, Cheryl, is you feel like that we can fund this ourselves, worst case scenario, if we do not get any grants. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think we can account for $460,000 of it
through the fire special assessment.
through
And
the money we have already budgeted, 200,000 this year towards a fire truck. And then the 262,000 that we're going to get over the next two tax cycles. December tax cycles, because we don't levy in the,
you
in the
said that
summer.
leaves us short, I'm sorry, I wasn't writing it all down, by
Well,
about
I-
130,000. Is that what you said?
I think the price is 550 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's just under 550, but.
Like 90,000.
So before we
About
do a
that.
lot of calculating here. What is the down payment requirement that we have to come up with?
That's
And
listed right
when
here.
is that due? Should be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, they could speak specifically to it. I read that the chassis payment was due at the chassis delivery of $113,130.
Yep,
And then when CSI starts their work, I assume that's the 25% of the body price down at the project startup, which is 88,000 and some change. So, we've got what, roughly $201,000.
221,000, isn't it? Oh, no, 201.
$201,000 that is
Right.
going up to, and that. And I mean, in essence, that's what we have on hand at
Mhm.
this moment in time.
Yep.
And then the balance is due on delivery, and that is anticipated to be second quarter 2025. So that remaining 348,000, call it 350,000. We're anticipating having two millage collections of 262,000. So that leaves roughly the $90,000, rounding up, just round
Yep.
numbers, not specific, but that's left hanging.
I'm sorry, what was that number done?
I had approximately 90,000.
No, okay, so can
he's
we,
rounding up on numbers, so.
can we round it to 100,000? Just
Fine by
for
me.
discussion
Yeah,
purposes?
fine by me.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, I think makes it easier to talk about.
So we got 100K left over to finance, right?
Yeah,
So could we borrow from one of our other funds?
Good
Della.
question.
Della, you said something like, are we looking to fund this ourselves? And if we have that capability, that would be a whole lot less administrative work, right? For your department, for Cheryl's department. Right? I mean, you wouldn't have to make annual payments. It looks, I think it was annual payment.
well, depending if you, on the financing, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, because we're possibly 2 years out from having to come up with that 100,000. In the meantime, I mean, we could plan to fund it ourselves,
Yeah,
but in the meantime, we have plenty of time to look for grants that would pay for that 100,000. And plenty of time. I'm not saying wait till the last minute, of course, but
I wonder if.
administratively, I think we could both handle that. That's not an issue. It's just if we can fund it internally and not short any of the other funds that are going to need the money, I would prefer to do that. Rather than looking for a loan at this point.
My thought is we've got some money sitting in roads, right? I'm a little cautious to use that because under new ownership, we are kind of getting some signals that things might change kind of back to the way they were.
Oh, what? The people weren't happy with the change?
So
Do
I-
do they have a bill coming up they want to get voted in again?
I'm just,
Unfortunately not, but
yeah, I'm
we'll
just,
be outvoted anyways.
I'm just reluctant to use that money without replacement. If the road commission kind of moves back to a plan that we were accustomed to and everybody was dealing with on an annual basis. But, there's some money sitting there that we could use temporarily and.
Well, and we could always budget for a $50,000 transfer over the next 2 years out of the general fund into, rather than taking money out of another fund, and that starts to get harder to track. I mean, you can track it, but to me, you just set aside, you just say, okay, over the next 2 budget cycles, you're going to get $50,000 out of the general fund and put it into the fire capital improvement fund, and it's solely for the new fire engine. I mean, I don't know what we,
And so in your synopsis there, Cheryl, would the general fund ever get repaid that transfer? Or do you think that's a gift? Cause I'm kind of moving towards making the fire department self-funding. They already are, no offense, Brandon. But we really, do we want them to be financially standalone?
Well, on
well,
normal operations, they are.
That's right,
Yeah, and
as you
that's what I'm
pointed out.
saying. That's what
Right,
I'm
yeah.
saying.
This
Yeah.
is not normal operations. This is equipment asset replacement. So
Well,
I think the township actually,
the age of our equipment, this might become more regular is my point. And is there any want to, for example, leave this $500,000 that we levied on for an extra year to give Chief Flynn some cushion on the next purchase? You know, bunker gear only lasts 10 years. Tires only last, what, 7 now? Yeah, 6 or 7. And you might as well figure they're $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So.
well, I would have somewhat of a problem with that because when we discussed this additional $500,000 levy, which is another 50% above what we're already levying, we said, and I voted for it on the basis that it was temporary to fund a fire engine. And so I don't think that we should keep that going. I mean, honestly, Chief Flynn is very frugal with his fire fund budget, because remember, we're talking about the 206 and the 406 funds here. And Chief Flynn, you know, barring some unforeseen catastrophe that comes up, he's extremely frugal with his fire fund budget, the 206 fund, and we could actually look at in the spring what's going to be left in the fire fund. And if there's $35,000 there, that, and we've done this before, if there's $35,000 there that can be transferred over to the fire capital improvement fund to be earmarked solely for the engine, then maybe we only need $15,000 from the general fund. But I think we need to, you know what I'm saying? There might be that money left over, you know. So maybe it doesn't have to all come from the general fund, and I don't see any kind of payback. It's all the taxpayers' money. And,
Well, to your
you
point,
know,
we
we're
did,
talking about new money in the budget.
we did adopt the extra $500,000 to pay for the fire truck. So if we did that and we voted for that, then we shouldn't have to contribute anything from the general fund. Because the millage was put forth to the voter to pay for the truck.
Well, but
And
we
3
did,
year. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
we didn't know I mean, if we were buying a fire truck from one of these other vendors that are almost twice what CSI is gonna build it for, then we'd be talking about that $500,000 going out a lot further. From what I understand of how we discussed all this at budget time is that 131,000 was going to cover a payment, an annual payment, because we were talking about borrowing, that we would have to borrow money. Now it's not looking like Now that we've got the true numbers, because back at budget time, we were talking about a $750,000 vehicle.
Yes.
Now we're talking about a $550,000 vehicle. And it seems like we should be able to self-fund that with only a couple years of the increased levy on the fire special assessment district and other funds that are going to come into the, other tax money that's gonna come into the general fund and leftover money in the fire fund.
Okay, so my concern is, I kind of agree with you, Cheryl, but I want to make sure that the funding is going to be there.
Mhm.
2024, there could be a whole new board sitting here. We need to leave a roadmap for what it is we're planning today for whatever board is sitting here in 2024 budgeting time, right?
Mhm.
Well, then I think some of the decision then should be focused on the fact that when we initially did the half mill, the anticipated cost was substantially higher. I think we all agreed. I think it was leaning that way. Fortunately, things have softened a little bit in the market and we can take advantage of that. So 3 years at 131,000 puts you at $390,000. And that the first 2 years, basically the collection going to the end of first quarter 24 and first quarter 25 it takes you to that 260. And then now we're looking at the delivery of the truck in second quarter of 2025, which is leaving us that gap of $100,000. That half mill staying in one more year brings that $131,000 back around again. And what, in essence, if the intent was just to collect for the fire engine, then we're approximately $50,000. We've asked the community for $50,000 more than the truck actually cost. So what would be the disposition of that 50? Well, let's talk about the whole disposition of the 131, because if you're going to borrow it from another fund, and the half mill was specific for the fire engine, I think it should go back to that fund. That's just my opinion. But then there's also, if you collect that third year and you're fully at the you're $50,000 more than you collected, can there an argument be made to what Pop said, that maybe that 50,000 should stay in capital fire improvement, and potentially, discussion of ending that half mill, because there is some reserve built in there for some maintenance and potentially some other items that have to be taken care of that will emerge in 3 years.
But where are we going to be?
Yeah. But payments due before. 3
Yeah,
years
so
from
that we
now.
have to figure out where,
Right.
where to, can you, but I don't, I somewhat, just to keep the housekeeping clean, if we take money from the general fund to pay for that balance, I would, and then the half mills collected, I would rather see that money go back to the general fund, just to keep the consistency that the mill was used
If
for.
the mill is still in place.
You
I
can't,
can-
you can't do that. You
Okay.
can't do that. You can't take money that was levied for the through the fire special assessment district. That can only be used for fire. And I don't think it would be a good idea to transfer that money back to the general fund and call it, we're repaying a loan from the general fund. That doesn't look good on paper. And I don't think that we should do that, because as Della pointed out, in 2025, there might be an entirely different board setting here. And I don't want to put that board in the position of, the prior board decided to do this little deal where we're going to borrow from the general fund, but then we're going to pay it back out of fire special assessment district money. I don't think we can do that. I don't think we should do that.
Well, then that takes the road idea out of that as well then.
Yep.
So
No,
now
No, because the
No.
road money was transferred over from the general
That's
fund
right.
on. It's not a road millage.
That's true.
That's
So
right,
there,
yeah.
there's the
That's
difference.
right. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's not
Understood.
earmarked specifically for roads. But the fire millage, you know.
So the other thing that we could do is in the second year, we could bump the millage from 0.5 to 0.75. That would generate the additional money for the final payment. That'd be real close.
Yeah.
I mean, fire departments, to operate a fire department like what Chief Lynn does on one mill, that's unreasonable, folks.
It is.
I'm here to tell you that, you know, we're doing the community a disservice by not looking at improving his budget. Both staff wise, equipment, I think he's okay, but staff wise, we have to do something for him soon.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this.
Yep, we have.
This isn't the first time we've talked.
Well,
about
and
this.
we've done a lot already. We've already increased the wages massively over what they were when I took office here. Now maybe we haven't gotten money in there for a full-time, you know, one full-time position or something like that, but I'm not in favor of increasing that millage in that second year by another quarter. That's not gonna get you 100,000. That's gonna get you half of 131,000. So about 65,000. So you're still gonna be short, and I don't wanna do that to our taxpayers.
Well, you were talking like 35 would come from his budget if there was some leftover money.
Yeah,
Right?
right,
And
yeah,
then the
yeah.
number's actually 90,000.
yeah,
So
Right.
then you're getting within pennies.
pennies of other people's bank accounts.
Was that an eye roll, Ardella?
No, I have learned not to do those.
So I believe that it's within our grasp to fund it without financing.
I agree.
I certainly feel that way.
Cheryl?
Yeah, I think we've got the money, or we're gonna have the money to, and if, Chief Flynn comes across, a really nice grant opportunity or something that, you know, we might get some money that we're not counting on today. But certainly can be funded, from what we have on hand, the Fire Special Assessment District, and general fund monies, general and or fire fund monies.
Chief, out of all the grants you've written for the township, how many of them allowed you to pre-purchase something before applying for the grant? The state of Michigan, most recent grant did, right? That was kind of reimbursement.
And they went back to August of 2022 actually, and that's kind of unusual, but
Right.
most of the time. You have to apply for the grant before you make it.
Yeah.
Finance obligation advice.
Well,
And so I
and,
don't think we have a grant opportunity here that exists today.
well, and I mean, the chief has superior grant writing skills, and I guess, well, he does. And he's brought a lot of money into the township. And so actually, if he writes a grant for something else that frees up, you know, like he's done with the SCBA and that type of thing, that freed up a lot of money that the township didn't have to come up with for that, then that's really like a gift to the fire engine.
See, I've been working on this for like 3 years, and there really isn't too much out there for vehicle grant writing.
Yeah,
AFG is, I won't even bother writing an AFG grant for a vehicle because it's hard to sweep. And, but it's like, to rely on a grant at this point, you know, I've just been investigating that route for several years. That's come up again.
yeah,
But we also have to consider, just throwing it out there, the sale of our current fire engine. And I don't know the value of that, but, that's gonna be some money coming in too, if we get the new vehicle service.
I had not considered that.
and one old brush truck that might not bring in too much, but that could be put in the 406 fund and be earmarked for fire engine two. Mm-hmm.
So thinking that we've got about 220,000 saved up for this, what was the 930 expense for of $70,000? There's a $70,000 difference between the August
Well, we
report.
paid for the brush truck. The
Brush
big brush
truck.
truck.
Was that brush truck?
I think that was 69,000 something.
Yeah, that makes sense then. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
we just paid another 17 for the service body,
Mhm. So how
but
much,
that's all in there.
how much more do we have? What is our liability left on that vehicle?
Not much, is there?
No, I think we're down to
Decals.
$3,000.
Okay.
The $105,000.
All right. So of the 229 figure that I've got on packet page 71, if we figured 220,000, we're probably close. At least in the realm of this discussion.
What's the 220,000 represent?
So what I gleaned from the 2023-2024 budget, we had set aside 105,000 for the new brush truck, 3,500 for the chief's vehicle, and $200,000 down payment on the new fire engine. According to the last revenue expense report, so far we've spent about 80,000 of all of that money.
Right, but we do have money that has to be transferred in there, 100,000 from the general fund. We actually budgeted 137,082 from the half mil increase, and then we've got 93,000 from the federal fund. That's the fire department's share of the township's ARPA funds that needs to go into those are what we budgeted for. Transfers into the general fund.
So with that thought in mind, we're already flush. Is that what you just said, Cheryl?
You mean to make a down payment?
No, we're flush now to make the down payment.
Yeah,
But if you're saying there's another 100,000 that needs to be transferred into 970. And there's already 230 sitting there.
well, there's not 230 sitting there as of today. I mean, like I say, we just paid the 17,000 yesterday for the
Okay.
service body.
All right.
So, I mean, you know, the balances change every time
Sure.
checks go out.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So we're now, so we're basically down to 210, and we need 201, so we have that covered. We have the two mills, the two collection periods, which take it to 260, and then you just the extra 100,000, it still hasn't been transferred over yet. That covers the 360.
Covers the whole thing.
Yeah,
That's how I see it.
When we make those transfers, this is what we can spend out of the fire capital improvement fund. So those things are all entered into, you all got this budget document back in April. Those transfers are needed to fund all of these purchases.
Now, let's see. The page you just held up, Cheryl, was that fire or fire cap?
Fire cap. Last page of the adopted budget.
That was the last page of the fire.
Yeah, if you're looking at it, it's electronic page 36.
Thank you. Scrolling through there.
Well, I sent all of you this adopted budget document on April 10th.
And you say it's the last
That's where
page.
everything was moved from the recommended column into the adopted column, and whatever changes we made at the budget public hearing were added to the document. So that's the adopted budget document that we should be referring to.
So Cheryl, your point was the total expenditure was 308,500. Is that your point?
Yes.
Yes,
And that was for this budget. What I think Don is indicating that if you take a look at the dollar amounts that we have in 970 right now, so that would be
406.
406, thank you, 970. We have about 230,000 at the time I wrote this. We pulled out about 20,000. So that leaves us at about 210,000.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these aren't exact numbers, they're just parameters. But then you said, if I understood you correctly, we still have to transfer in the ARPA funds into that.
The 93.
plus $100,000 from the general fund.
So
And then by the end of the fiscal year, we'll have this
137.
and see the millage money. The fire special assessment district millage money gets deposited into 206 because that's the fund that it funds. It funds the 206 fund. Then that money has to be moved from the 206 fund. Like, we can't move that money right now because we don't have it. We won't have that money until
what,
So there's three.
the half mil increase
right?
in the
Yep.
we can't transfer that until sometime in March because we won't have it until then.
And that-
Well, we collected starting December 1st, we start collecting that.
Right,
It gets deposited into the bank account.
206,
But
yeah.
to her point, it gets deposited to 206 and then has to be moved.
yes.
And it's no different than there's just another, and then when we're talking about transfers from other funds, there's three funds. Our federal ARPA, the 93,000 is coming from a different sub account. And the general
Different
fund
fund.
is obviously the 100,000. So to think that they're all coming from the same place is not accurate.
No, they're not.
They're just three, they are three transfers. They're just three separate and distinct transfers.
Yeah, but getting back to the point,
Yeah.
if the 100,000 has not been transferred from general fund.
Right.
Then now we have 310
Mhm.
in 406,970.
As
and-
of what date is that?
Well, I wrote this, what is the date of my memo? I wrote this on 10/16. And, again, looking at the most recent data that I have, which was ending 9/30. We had spent about 80,000 out of the fund. Which left about, let's just say 229,000. You said we paid another 17, let's call it 20. So now we've got 209,000 left there and some heavy change. Right?
Yep.
Is there something
The-
we're missing?
I don't like to use old numbers. You know,
I am
this
today.
isn't, you're using, are you getting the 930 number from Della's, treasurer report?
Mhm.
Okay. So if that's what Della shows was in there, I'm sure it's correct. We haven't balanced for September yet, so, but there shouldn't
Okay.
be anything major off. But I'm just saying that, and then some of that, we haven't finished paying for the new brush truck expenses yet,
Yeah, but we
although
figured
that
That was around
seems-
$3,000. Call it 5.
okay, yep, and then chief's vehicle things, which I don't know if there's gonna be any more of that, so,
Call it 10.
but the 100,000. All I'm saying, you can add up your numbers any way you want to. All I know is that we agreed on these transfers of $330,000. And then we agreed on these expenditures of 308,500. I'd have to go back. I just,
I don't.
How
think-
much of the 308,500 has already been expensed?
That's on packet page 71, Ardella.
some
So,
of the, some of the new brush truck money and obvious, and I don't think the chiefs had anything. Here again, I'd have to pull a report for 406-000-970 to know exactly what's been spent out of there.
I was keeping track of the numbers as you wrote them down.
Mhm.
And I went with the 210, not the 209, because that was the number that came out. And the 93,073 for the ARPA, 100,000 that's got to come over still from general. And the 137,082 for the 0.5 mil. That comes up to 540,155. That's why I was asking where we were at with the capital expenditures for the year. What really is sitting in that count
And
after,
that's what I
after all the
don't
plans.
exactly know,
Right,
sitting here
can-
today.
can we,
So I'm going to admit an error. So looking at my packet, page 71, that's the 308,500, which is the same 308,500 Cheryl's talking about on the budget. So the 100,000 from general fund and the 93 and change from ARPA is actually already in the
Part of that
308,500. So therefore it's part of the 229,500. Okay, so the pathway I was headed down that we still needed to add to that dollar value on packet page 71 is improper. That is what's left.
the 229.5?
Yeah, again, plus or minus, right? Because as Cheryl says, that account's gonna change daily or every time you make a payment. So we're still back to trying to find $100,000 in 2 years. And I think that's completely doable in a myriad of ways.
Well, and, I do too. And we just have to remember when budget season starts up, that we need to find that money. That we're shy of that money as far as what revenue we have coming in and what we have on hand to pay, basically pay cash for this fire engine. Cause what always happens is, you know, the budget document is created and then people sometimes think, oh, look, we've got all this money in the fire capital improvement fund, but we have to pay close attention to what of that has already been allocated, what is already earmarked for something.
Couple of times in this discussion, I've heard about a potential new board setting.
Yep.
Okay. Thinking about a new board and the challenges of a first budget or whatever the case. Should we be looking at financing, even though we can pay cash? Should we look at financing just to help that new group budget the first time around? Because as Cheryl said, you know, lending from various funds and so on and so forth, that might not be a first level budget creator.
You don't know what,
Yeah, you don't.
you don't know. I mean, there's plenty of lending institutions out there that lends money all day long, every single day to local governments at very low rates. If it came right down to it and we needed to do that, I think we have at least a year to put that in place, to be looking at that.
I see your point.
Yeah, I think what we should do is lay out the roadmap in the resolution so that the next board coming in, even if it's the same board, has a roadmap and a plan.
There won't be a resolution without borrowing. If we don't borrow, there doesn't have to be a resolution.
It doesn't have to be, but there can be.
I think there should be to memorialize exactly how this is planned to be paid for.
Yeah, what
Okay.
we've decided to do and how we've laid it out, and
Yeah, I would be in agreement. I think it's best just to map it out, what the thought process was, just in the events. Just to capture it.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any harm or foul in doing that. I think
Um,
it's,
you know, we require other commissions and boards to have their budget laid out pretty concise so everybody can follow it. There's nothing wrong with saying that, you know, us doing the same thing we're requiring of others.
And I don't know about borrowing money,
If we have to.
after we've already bought it. And we've said, oh, you know, we're gonna be a little shy here. Can you give us some money? I don't know
They do that.
if lending,
They do that. It's not the same thing as
yeah.
looking for grants. You're right. Grants, they generally don't want you to spend the money before you ask for it.
well, you have the rateable stream of revenue
Yeah.
with the $500,000.
Right.
So
Is that funding provided by Luigi down there in the alley?
No,
No?
it's
Okay.
Guido.
Guido.
they merged.
Guido Sarducci.
Just checking.
So as far as this motion, I wonder if we don't need to have this resolution in place before we enter into a contract so that we,
Are you gonna write the resolution, Cheryl?
no, I wasn't planning to.
Who's writing the resolution? Cause whoever's writing the resolution, I think, we should probably put it down on paper today, what should be in the resolution. Would you write the resolution? If I asked pretty please?
With your help,
Okay,
only with your help.
unless you wanna do it, Ron. Or Don.
Yeah, you know, I'm busy.
I'm just saying, I think that the tail end of this is just a little bit loose. You know, I think we know what we do to get up there, and I think I'm just not sure how the resolution is gonna read for that last 100,000. Cause I don't know that that is an absolute, we've discussed options. I just don't know that we've landed on an absolute defined path on that.
Well, and that's why the resolution needs to have a defined path, because this purchase is going to transcend an election. And so, as Della pointed out, that resolution needs to exactly map out how this is going to be paid for, so that, you know, another board can look back and say, okay, you know, I mean, they could actually change it, I suppose.
But
But I mean, that last 100,000, I think we will not have, from what I know of, you know, how we've been budgeting for 11 years. We will find that money either in the general fund or possibly in the fire fund. So, I think we just name those funds as in an and or situation, as the funds that are going to provide that last capital money for this project.
But isn't there a third caveat to that, that the third one, as you said, the fire fund or the general fund, but isn't there a third one that there could be a bridge loan scenario based on the third year collection of the $500,000 to repay that bridge loan to finalize that?
Here again, I don't see anyone, I don't want to be a part of a transaction that shows fire fund, fire special assessment district money going back to the general fund. I don't think that's a good idea.
I'm not saying
oh, no, I
That's
didn't
not what
hear
I'm
you
saying.
say payback. It was in addition to.
finance that last 100,000 on a bridge loan until the collection of that third year
I get
$500,000
a bridge loan from where?
from a bank or from a financial institution.
From a power company.
He's saying put the option in there,
I suppose,
right?
Yes.
leave it as an option.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I hear what everybody's saying and I like the idea of the roadmap and whatnot. But, you know, our budget may look significantly different over the next 2 or 3 years. We may not have spare money. You know, it's our frugalness that creates that boot money that we can transfer over to fire, and we can transfer over to roads, and we can transfer over to public improvement. That's because of our frugalness. And I will say, you're some of the four of the cheapest people I've ever seen in my life, okay? But others may not be.
And I, again, you know, you've articulated much better, but I think that helps. I think that even supports that third option I just suggested. That there is there, you know, assuming things are as they are, you may have options 1 and 2. Assume those things change. 1 and 2 may not be as fluid or cash rich, and they may have to finance from an outside entity. But you have the $500,000 in place already to repay that short-term loan. So
Speaking of the $500,000, when we put that in place, I can't recall, did we do that by resolution? Did we do anything that left a roadmap of when we said it was going to end?
I'd have to go back and look at the minutes.
Because, you know, we keep talking about an additional year of it. Where's it at? What's to tell the next board?
well, I think the resolution was talking about paying for the fire engine.
Yep.
And so I'm using the third year just because we're at the point where we are now achieving the full payment of the fire engine plus $40,000 or $50,000 is forecasted. And I think, you know, I don't think that the timeline was in there other than the statement of paying for the fire engine. But at that time, we thought it could have been $750,000, so.
Right.
Well, somehow we found 100,000 from the general fund to transfer to the fire capital improvement fund this year. So if we're just talking about, 50,000, half that, 2 more years, it seems like we ought to be able to find that, to tell you the truth, between that and the fire fund 206, which has transferred money to the fire capital improvement fund in at least 1 year that I remember.
I would like to muddy the waters as usual if I can. So I'll see if I can do this math on the fly. We've got a $550,000 base cost. We're going to subtract 200,000 that we set aside in this budget as the down payment, which gives us $350,000 left over.
What'd you say it was? I'm sorry.
550.
Yep.
Minus the 200 we budgeted. Leaves 350. Let's take 260 away from that,
From the 350?
from the 350. And I believe that's where Don got his 90,000 from, right?
Yes.
So that's really what we gotta come up with is 90K. And that could be on a different board. So now let's look at packet page 77. That's where we begin to look at some financing.
Well, actually, probably only, you said that could be on a different board, that full 90. We've got one more budget season under us.
I don't think we should leave all of that for
Yeah,
possibly a
well,
different board.
let's just say worst case scenario, right? Let's just say worst case scenario. So look at option 1, where we have 3 years. If we financed the 361, which is pretty close to our 350. 6% interest. 18,000 or 1,800. Got to be 18,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
Over 3 years, it's $44,124.
Okay,
So 45,000, 15,000 a year.
What's that represent, Don?
Interest.
Yeah.
And then option 2, 5 years. That, I mean, obviously, I don't know that we're discussing that, but that obviously kicks it up to almost 66,000. So, but option 1 in this case, it's 6% interest. You're paying $44,000 in interest
over the term.
over the 3 years.
Yeah,
Yes,
over the 3
over
years.
the 3 years.
And so I was just going to ask, typically, early payments, you don't have any pre-penalties. So is the smart thing to do is to enter the financing, let's just say option 1 at this point, pay off what we can pay off. We already know that, by March of 24, we'll have 131,000. This payment of 135,000 under option 1 won't really be due until, let's say, November 1st of 24.
What did you say the interest over the life of the loan was gonna be?
I arrived at it at $44,124. Because I took the, it took, where they had the amount financed was the 361, and then they applied the lease rate and put a annual payment of 135,281. If you just multiply that by 3, it comes out to be 405,800 minus the 361, which was the principal. is $44,000 in finance charges.
Why would we want to spend $44,000 when we're pretty much sure we can handle this without taking out a loan?
Well, this was potentially a fourth pathway to transcend an election.
Yeah, I'd rather leave them a roadmap. They'll
Okay.
figure it out. The 44,000 seems like it could be spent someplace else.
Yeah.
Better used someplace else if we had to spend that much money. I,
Be spending that. You would only be financing 90,000 because you would pay the 260,000 when we took delivery of the truck. Because there's no penalty for early repayment. So that's, and if you go for a 2 years down the road, how would that bridge loan, you're gonna be paying probably more.
I mean, that's where that was the option 3 to the resolution that I suggested putting it. Cause it is a $90,000 bridge loan.
And I think the suggestion would be contact Rick on that one and find out truly where, because I know if you paid off in the first year, there are penalties for that. I don't know beyond a year, I believe that you're fine. You can't actually borrow the money and just pay it off that truck. Because there are penalties, not what they do with that money in escrow, it's gotta be in there for so long. But with the finances that you've come up with today or discussed today, there wouldn't be anything wrong. In fact, I encourage that you guys contact your attorney directly and share exactly some of the thoughts you have. And he could probably help you on that final stage of that roadmap on what would make sense. Because you may not need to borrow that much. You might say you only need to borrow $100,000, $150,000. Let them rewrite this with $150,000 and put a much bigger down payment.
So Brandon, or Scott, these proposed finances, option 1, for example, I understood it so far in our discussion that the payments would begin upon our contract signature.
Begin 1 year after closing of the finance. You close like that quote there, I believe, got to be closed by November 15th or something, I do believe.
That's the date on it, yes.
Okay.
And so the due date is 11/15/2024.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that's what we talked about at the fire station, that the contractor, the financing agency is totally independent.
Right.
of the contractor, the
Right.
fire truck. And in many cases, in fact, more often than not, your first payment's made before your truck is paid. Now they can defer the first payment out 24 months. So your first payment will be 2 years after signing that contract, which will get your truck to pay. But that one you probably don't want to pay clean off.
Yeah.
Those would be questions that we would talk about. They're so close to it, that I don't know, and I agree, I don't know if financing is really even.
Yeah.
That seems like the least desirable of this option. It seems to me if in 2 years, if the opportunity doesn't present itself to move some money in this upcoming budget and then the second year of the upcoming budget, and you're faced with the $90,000, you have the rateable revenue stream of the $500,000, getting that short-term loan for $90,000 for conceivably less than a year. But look, just, if you're looking at second quarter 2020, well, maybe a year, the second quarter of 2025, you would need that 90,000, but by the end of the first quarter 2026, you have now collected that 131,000 again. You've actually collected $40,000 more than you're going to need to pay that loan back. That's why I just call it a bridge loan, because it's 1 year.
And you don't have to levy the whole 1.5 if you don't need it to pay off the fire engine. You could be 1.35
Yeah.
or
To your
something
point,
like
half
that.
of a quarter
I mean,
percent.
that's not-
65,000.
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know that we have to go down this road of getting more complex than.
Okay.
than-
So then we're back to the resolution and how we want it mapped out. Is that something the two of you want to bring back at a different meeting? I honestly think the goal was to get some signatures today, wasn't it, chief?
For the contract,
Yeah,
well, sooner the better. I think we still have some time with that. Lot of structure.
can we order it in red? Yeah. Yeah,
You don't like the yellow that's out there?
I'm just saying,
Oh,
get that thing a VIN number and get it made. I think that's really gonna be the. I don't know much about Freightliner anymore. Yep. Yep. I trust the people in Grayling, but I don't
Does
know.
does the absolute signing of a resolution have to be done in order to sign this contract? If in essence,
I think we've all agreed that we're gonna self-fund.
yeah, that's,
It's just a matter of leaving the roadmap
yeah, so,
on how we're doing it and to be accountable to the public of how we're paying for this.
I mean, so signing or approving a signing of the contract today. We've agreed it's self-funding. The next step would just be the resolution to leave that roadmap. Because mathematically, we know it works and the half mill's in place.
I think I see where you're going. So really, we could. Approve the motion, maybe not the motion that's on the floor right now. Because I would like to see a dollar value with the motion.
It was just the one you put in the packet, so.
And so,
Yeah, and approve it, vote on that motion. And then come back with the resolution, which is the finer detail of the financing.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm good with that.
seems
How about you?
reasonable, doesn't it?
When do you think we'd have the resolution done? I don't know that it'd be ready for the November 14th meeting. Or
When
maybe it
I
would.
know you're,
I don't know that there's if it didn't happen November, I don't see why December is any more of a problem because nothing's gonna take place here until second quarter of 2024 because the Freightliner chassis hasn't been delivered. And there's no financial out of pocket until that Freightliner's
Well,
delivered.
I thought we had to put we don't have to put the down payment down before they order the chassis.
Nope. We have to pay when the chassis is received.
Chassis time.
So that's any
Mhm.
forecast of that second quarter, 2024. So there's no financial outlay. So I don't know that the resolution didn't get done to December. I don't feel like that's a impediment.
I agree.
Well, I'm gonna withdraw my motion, or rescind. Since it's not,
No, not really.
yeah, I'd rather see the resolution in place, before, just because I think that's kind of the cart before the horse, but, I know no one wants to, delay this, but I don't want future boards to say, well, they ordered it before they even had their resolution in place to.
We don't need a
Yeah.
resolution to buy this thing.
the
It's not needed.
resolution was just so
The
that,
Well, I'm
resolution
not
is-
sure that's true. Resolutions are different than motions. And I actually do think there probably should be a resolution to even purchase this thing. I mean, it's a huge purchase. And motions, motions are motions, and I wonder whether there shouldn't be a resolution even to purchase it. I don't know, there's a book, that tells, I have a copy in my office, I think it's the Township Board Meetings book or something like that, that tells the things that you should have resolutions for as opposed to motions. And I didn't consult that for this particular instance, but I don't, that should be looked into.
When did we purchase the pumper tanker? What year?
2019, 19, 20? 19 or 20? Okay.
Well, if we didn't have a resolution then, I don't think that's a good. I don't know. I think, yeah, we had the money from rural. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was my thinking, that we didn't have a resolution to buy that one. What's different now? And I understand your point, Cheryl, that just because we didn't do it then, should we not do it now? I think a motion is acceptable. If we've done it wrong once.
We're gonna lose another quarter.
There's a concern that we're losing time. It's best to get in line now. Because of the way these things are built, the timelines involved.
I'm concerned now with getting that second quarter back.
Yeah, critical.
That is the critical. And I know Scott. Yeah, the taxpayers about where we're sandbagging. We've got a business from.
Can't put my finger right on the book. It's an MTA publication and I understand where we're at.
So who seconded the original motion?
You
Well, I've
did.
rescinded the motion,
And
so.
so I'll take back my second, even though I think we're supposed to take that to a vote. I don't think you can actually rescind a motion in Robert's rules, but.
Well, we've been doing it for many meetings.
uh,
And many motions at many meetings have been rescinded.
And to your point, just because we did it wrong once, doesn't mean we need to do it
Yeah,
wrong twice. So I'm gonna make a motion to allow Chief Flynn to enter into a contract with CSI.
I will second.
Not
Oh.
the amount. Not to exceed $550,000. Hang on. To purchase a CSI built new fire pumper truck. How does that read back? I think CSI is in the wrong place.
to allow Chief Lynn to enter into a contract with CSI in the amount not to exceed $550,000 to purchase a CSI built new fire pumper truck.
Okay, so I had two CSIs in there. Which I think the second one could easily be deleted. Enter into a contract with CSI to build a new fire truck. I mean, just drawing off of what Chief had put down there.
I just run something by here, see.
Oh.
Oh, I had jotted this out. I'm just wondering if this. Because I think we argue, to your point, there's some few, I had written out, and Cheryl, don't type this, it's just motion to allow Chief Flynn to enter into a contract with CSI Emergency Apparatus LLC to build a new fire pumper truck per the quote dated September 5th, 2023, in the amount not to exceed $550,000 for a total apparatus, which is the description on the quote.
Seconded.
Do you have that written down?
Yeah, you're not gonna read my writing, so.
Motion to,
Allow Chief Flynn to enter into a contract with capital CSI. And I'm using their full company name, Emergency Apparatus. Let's see.
Mhm.
To build a new fire pumper truck. Per the quote dated September 5th, 2023, in the amount not to exceed $550,000 for a total apparatus.
total apparatus cost.
It'd be description on the item, the line item here is just says total apparatus.
And can I make one suggestion?
Mhm.
So I'm looking at packet page 4.
Yeah.
And I see the chassis. I see the CSI apparatus body
Mm-hmm.
and equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And so could we somehow work the word equipment into that motion?
Sure, that, between those two bars, that's why I used the descriptor total apparatus of 500. But if you feel there's better to line item that, then.
Total apparatus and equipment?
Or, for a, instead of maybe 550,000 for a, chassis, CSI apparatus, body and equipment.
I was just thinking we add your motion, just as you
Mhm.
had it, but and equipment.
Okay, I mean, I think, yeah, the quotes,
You're right, you
Yeah.
are right. Yep, the quote is dated September 5th, and that was a good idea.
so. For a total apparatus, including equipment. Okay. Okay, now we butchered that up, so, here, I'm sorry, could I ask you to read that back, just as, make sure it meshes with what I have?
Okay, to allow Chief Lynn to enter into a contract with CSI Emergency Apparatus LLC to build a new fire pumper truck per the quote dated 9/5/23 in the amount not to exceed $550,000 for a total apparatus and equipment.
Okay,
Seconded. Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Roll
I
call.
still think we need a resolution, but for something this big, but, I mean,
But we are gonna put together a resolution, right?
So I was gonna say, if additional investigation turns that up, Cheryl, that we should have, or it'd be best practice somehow, we can always affirm this board action with a resolution. Is that a possible way forward?
I don't know, without consulting what the law says, I can't opine on that. I think there might actually be some law on this, to tell you the truth, but, I'm not positive.
Any other discussion? Roll call when ready.
Baumuth is absent. Bennett,
Yes.
Ha,
Yes,
Glenn,
yes,
Goss, I'm gonna vote no, only I support the fire truck. I've supported it all along, but only for the reason that I think we need a resolution. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for all your hard work in getting this together.
Well, we couldn't have done it without the support of the board. We got $200,000. Take up for down payment. For the action of the board.
And yours.
It's kind of you to say, but you did a lot of heavy lifting on this, chief.
There's still a lot more.
Yeah.
Jim.
Okay, next item is the financing, but I think we've kind of run that around already. Unless somebody has an additional question on that particular business item, I consider it done. Concur,
Yeah, I have nothing further.
Cheryl?
Yeah, I've already got that those two agenda items were discussed together, so.
Are you good with that, Ardella?
I am.
Okay, so then we'll move into number 3, park business. For once, our timing to apply for a grant, we're aware of the timing needed to apply for a grant. And so this business item is put forth for the Michigan Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund application process. And I was, as it says, I'd like to find a way to get the road paved if at all possible. But thinking about all of what we have to do between now and the deadline of this, which would be, I think, April, if I remember correctly. What does the board feel about, number one, making an application? Number 2, projects. I think the 5-year park and recreation plan looks at park improvements, maybe including the road. Some people think it was just the boat launch. I think we're covered if we chose to go with the road. But thinking of a road, and that's about little more than a half a mile. Current reconstruction of a road is about $1 million a mile. So we probably have another $600,000 project in our lap, which 300 of it could potentially be a grant. I need to thank Beth Friend for sending me this reminder. She was making out an application and found that we had not been granted. We have not been given a grant from this particular fund in more than 10 years, which gives us like an additional 20 some points, which is huge. I have somebody who will write the grant.
So let me ask the road's important.
Yes.
The road is very important. Could this, would this Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, could that as a possibility be used for rebuilding of a ranger station?
Yep.
Because, you know, 3 priority projects, not in any particular order, certainly would be the road, a new ranger station to survive the next 25 years. And there's certainly that ongoing problem with the pit toilets down by the, you know, so, I mean, there's, you know, three pretty important projects. And I think not debating the merits of any one over the other. I think that if we were, I would opinion that because of the fact that we would score the bonus points as you spoke it, that is a huge advantage. So I would think that we should go for a project that maximizes that 300,000 grant cap, because the likelihood of getting such a favorable score maybe the head, maybe the tail when we need to get this done.
And I understand that 2024 limits have moved from 300 to 400,000.
Did I also read this correct, just so, that there is a matching portion of this for basically, for lack of 25%, so 25,000 per 100. So if you were to apply for a max grant cap of 400,000, the township's commitment would be 100,000 on top of that. So you've got to.
But I believe in the scoring rubrics, if you go above 25, you get more points.
I see.
And so if you looked at it as a 50-50,
Yeah.
I think you get, well, I don't remember the number, but it's
Other
double digits.
than the pit toilet, and I'm just making certain assumptions on that. The road and or a ranger station being built are going to be all of 500,000 as a standalone project.
Mhm.
Because one thing I think you're just discounting in the road a little bit, from an earlier exploration of that last portion, that half mile, there's that swell in there that has a drainage issue that's going to have to be addressed. And that was quoted to me at around about $110,000 to fix that problem. So I would say, you know, if we think the road is $500,000, I think it's prudent to expect that there's at least 100,000 for that water drainage problem down there. And so,
Sure.
and I don't think you do the road without fixing that. The ranger station, depending how big you build, you know, that you can debate, you know, recently, you know, if you were building, and I just equated to the convenience store industry, building something out there was roughly 200 a square foot. I think that number's higher now. I would put it closer to 300 a square foot to get that fully loaded. So if you had, you know, 2,000 square feet, I'm just picking a number, that's 600,000, you know, 1,500 square feet would have seat 450. So I think there's two very large projects there that could be argued for, equally important. And the only reason I'm not saying that the pit toilets aren't important, but that project is going to be substantially less. I would think.
Cheryl, you brought to the board a house by what, Arrow or something, a building by Arrow Homes that was going to be placed kind of
Well,
down.
no, it was gonna be a flush toilet facility
Yeah.
at the boat launch.
Yeah, but didn't Arrow,
I think it was 125,000 or thereabouts.
yeah, and I was thinking about 140, but didn't Arrow Homes design the building? Weren't they going to build it?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we still have plans for that?
I still have a book on it. We probably had some proposed plans. I don't know that we ever paid Arrow Homes for them.
So it's something that, and that's really why I chose to put in the motion, which I probably should have started this conversation off with. Because I knew we had some documentation on the bathhouse, but we also have documentation on the road. And so if we were thinking about another major project.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Both. Can we swing a $400,000 project from our funding? And maybe we just,
Well,
what
you-
about updating
right
it just to
now, you're
gravel?
gonna be in the red at the end of this month, because we just paid, the park fund's gonna be in the red because nothing's been transferred back,
From the general.
from the general fund, and you don't have, in the park fund, the totality of the pay application too, that we just paid yesterday. So some money needs to come back from the general fund to the park fund to get that fund in the black again.
Sure.
Also, these Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grants, this is an annual thing. The DNR's grant application process, their grant submissions are always due April 1st. So this is an annual thing with them. And, you know, of course, Fleece and Vandenbrink was instrumental in getting us the $200,000 matching grant from the Waterways Division. You know, there's the Recreation Passport, there's the Land and Water Conservation Fund, there's the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. They have different funds that they, and different requirements, of course, for each type of grant request that they'll accept. So, but you know, you gotta have your projected costs and all that stuff, you know, but I mean, there's time to, you know, for you to do that before April 1st, of course. I
So-
guess it's just a matter of you deciding on what item are you gonna go for funding for, and I think that's where you're going.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the point of this discussion.
Yeah.
And is there a reason to look at just improving Park Road, our portion of Park Road, to a better gravel base, for example? So rather than spending, you know, $600,000 on the entire road, which is gonna include the road commission and a lot of minutia that quite frankly, we won't be successful in between now and April, right? Just because their management is settling into place.
Well, I think it would be a big mistake to pave that last, it's 0.44 miles, I believe, according to the road commissions. Because anytime you have pavement, and I saw this, happen in my own neighborhood when I lived on Lackey Road. After that pavement went in over there and we'd had gravel for all those years. And when I moved out there, we had an administration at the road commission who took care of the gravel roads. And then, Mike, what's his name, that got fired from Manistee County, I think, they hired him, Dylan Beck, and it was, then the gravel roads were not a priority, they turned to crap, so the residents begged for pavement, right? And then as soon as they got pavement, I mean, the speeds over there are ridiculous. And you shouldn't, from a safety standpoint, have people traveling down that last half mile of Park Road, because I'm here to tell you, you put pavement on there, they're gonna be driving 55 and 60 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden they gotta slam on the brakes for a ranger station or the entrance to the park. That's dangerous, and also the trails cross that road in 3 places. The park's existing trails cross Park Road in 3 places in that section right there. And somebody's gonna step out in front of a car and get run over.
So,
If you've got 50, because you build pavement, they're gonna drive pavement speeds.
so if you thinking about what you said about going with some type of a gravel versus paved. I don't know about you guys, but I remember when I was a kid, dirt roads were hard. I'm not sure what they put on them back then, but they were like They were like
Hard.
pavement.
Oil brine.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's gotta be
Well,
some
and
material,
clay.
right? There's gotta be some way to do this where it's harder, so it doesn't wash out. I mean, we have a lot of sand that last half mile, a
Mhm.
lot of sand. And where the county roads got more product on it, obviously, and they grade it, we're not gonna be grading ours.
We should be though.
Well, we always have. That road's been graded before.
But the county
last-
doesn't put product down on our
the-
half mile, correct?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
I'm not
We
talking
pay-
about brine, I'm talking about.
No,
Oh.
well, I don't know what they did this year, but, in past years, they've come out and, worked on that last half mile. Graded it.
They haven't dropped any rock, but they've graded it out.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. They haven't dropped any rocks.
After several of these really hard rains, they brought a blade down through there and graded it out, because it was a disaster. So, but to your point.
Yeah, it does
There's a-
get really bad
there's
with
a lot of
rain.
sand.
So
and the
what would it
hills.
cost us? I'd be interested in, what would it cost us to do our half mile with the materials like what we use in the park now?
I mean, the
For-
first half mile, the county, came through and redid all of that a few years ago, about 5 years ago now. And they cut back some trees and they, widened it substantially. And, they laid down, a good, whatever their base is that they put on it. I don't know what it's called, but anyways, they improved their half. And I know through last year that at least that was holding up well. Their half. Which also has hills on it.
I guess I'm saying I'd be interested in looking at what it would take to improve our half, but not paving it.
I mean, I don't, and also I can tell you, there'll be people down here wanting to know why their paved road didn't get fixed. If you lay down a half a mile of pavement out there, there's gonna be people wanting to know, gee, what are you doing laying down pavement out there? And there's only, what, a handful of houses served, you just at Merrill Ridge, you got what, 3 or 4 houses in there or something like that. And all of a sudden you got this pavement showing up down to the park and other roads haven't been addressed. That's not gonna look real good.
It's because the township has control of that road, where we don't the other roads. We rely on the road commission, which
I'm
is a
not,
problem.
yeah, and I'm talking perception
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
Perception is perception, and people who don't come to these meetings, don't know what the distinction is.
Don, you did some work on improving the driving surface of that road. What, about a year ago, maybe, or a little more, almost 2 years ago now, probably. And so what's your thought about gravel surface?
Well, the application I was looking at, talking to two different contractors, who claimed that they had experience with that product. They were not satisfied with it and
Okay.
were not very interested in pursuing that. And so, subsequently, I got one quote, which basically, and that was for the whole road. We hadn't talked to the county at that point, but it was like right at $1 million for the whole road, plus another 110,000 to fix the drainage issue. And the contractor said, I'm not doing that road unless that's part of it, because you're just never going to be happy. It's going to be a constant problem. You have a fixable problem there. Goes back to what Della was saying, there's so much sand down there. A lot of that just has to be dug out, rebased and whatever type of drainage, attached to it to control the water flows. So, it's a big project. And I think that from Elk Lake Road to up about where the cell tower is, that's been in pretty good shape this year. It's been pretty hard packed. The brining I didn't pick up any complaints from any of the brining, any of the dust. I don't know if anyone else did. But I thought what they did this year was either better or we had better conditions for it. We did have worse conditions to me down in that sand pit area. Unfortunately, the county graded that out a couple times, which will solve that. I look at, to me, I'm probably placing slightly ahead of the road is the ranger station. Because it's revenue generation. I think there's other things that we could be selling out there to make money. And so, the road's a nice to have, and at some point in time, it's part of it being fixed is a need to have. I think we should look at that sand pit area, but I feel maybe some of the effort should be put into now that we have the layout in there, we can position the ranger station for the next 20 or 25 years. So that's my 2
So
cents
you
worth.
would kind of, maybe equal road and ranger station, maybe ranger station kind
Slightly,
of slightly edges
slightly.
out.
Yeah.
I would have to agree. I
Yeah.
would have to agree with Don. I mean, it would be very nice to have that road fixed, but I think there's small things that we can do in the meantime to get through. Less expensive than redoing that whole section. But that ranger station is been in dire need of being replaced for a very long time. I mean, it was basically a shed that was turned into a ranger station, So having a larger one where people could actually step inside to talk to the rangers if they need to.
Well, that used to happen and that went away with COVID.
But
you know,
yeah, I mean, I've been
so-
in it,
Yeah.
a very small
Right,
space.
yeah.
But
But if you want to have retail, there's no room for retail
right,
in there.
no room. for
Although
retail.
shirts and hats, sweatshirts used to be sold out of there, but, those weren't replaced when they finally were.
Are we talking about
sold.
putting a bathroom in the new ranger station?
I haven't thought about design. I've just thought about, retail operations, potentially what else we can sell.
If we're talking about modernizing what we're doing down there.
But, there's an awful lot of camping related merchandise that there's also, there's just,
I know when we go camping, we go to the camp store.
yeah, I would regale you all with the story of going as a child to Camp Dearborn and being 8, 9, 10 years old, and the best time of the life was going to the cantina and buying candy with no parents around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we camped at Otsego Lake State Park for years and they had a big camp store right on the beach with comic books and candy and
It's
all the
part
junk
of the
food and
experience.
part of that stuff, but you gotta remember too, I would just caution that, the more stuff you have for sale, the more stocking you have to do, the more people you're gonna need to run the ranger station. You gotta have people.
All right, so
point.
let's say ranger station edges out. I don't know that I can get. I've read so many pages of this particular application. I don't think we need an actual plan set, but I think we need kind of like a visionary design, a conceptual design. I can try and work on, a 2,000 square foot building, again, just using a number. for grant purposes. I know we've got something with the bathroom already set up. If we can locate it.
He's saying a ranger station that was designed at one point.
No, it was a bathroom that was designed. So I have some documents to leapfrog from, right? So I could take it to an estimator and say, how much is it to build this today? So if it's the board's wish, I mean, I can attempt to do something with a ranger station. Sure, what's your thought?
2,000 square foot ranger station? Is that the number you said?
Yeah, yeah.
You can do whatever you want. I think that's a massive building for that park. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I built 1,000 square foot house once, so I know exactly how much a room 1,000 square foot house is. And to double that for a ranger station, you're gonna have to have, I'm just looking at, you know, you can build a building, get a grant for a building, but then somebody, I mean, you're gonna have to have more than one person working in there anytime it's open. I mean, yeah, you could, we always, we've had various little sketches for ranger stations. We were always gonna put in a little bathroom in there so that a ranger wouldn't have to walk over to and close the ranger station and walk over to the,
It'd be nice to have a
to
separate.
the bathhouse.
Right.
So you know, you got a toilet and a sink in there. We were gonna have a little room where, the end of the night book work could be done. That was not
Manager's
in the
office.
public eye. the
Right, a
ranger
manager's office would be nice.
We were gonna have a storage room for some supplies in there. We were gonna have some,
Do you have these
know,
sketches available?
I don't even know if they exist anymore. They were probably drawn on a napkin.
Okay.
But anyways,
All the best plans are.
I mean, I think Brian Cobb, even at one time, we were thinking about getting one of the, buildings, one of the buildings from Cedar Creek Storage Barn. They have very well-built movable buildings. And we had come up with a configuration. I mean, we've been to other parks, investigated their ranger stations. You know, what looks good, what doesn't, how you keep people out of the administrative type area, you know, that type of thing. But I mean, if you want to go for a 2,000 square foot ranger station, I think that's
Is that
way
something that
overkill.
you were like envisioning more like a pole barn structure where maybe the back half of it is for equipment storage and like storage of the go-kart and the maintenance equipment, because we've talked about possibly hiring a maintenance person. Are you thinking along those lines? I mean, an office for the park manager would be ideal in that location. Like you said, the end of the night book work, but also you've got to have a place to secure the funds that are out there. And the equipment at the end of the season. But I'm thinking, you know, we hired a full-time park manager. Where's he gonna work at the end of the season? I would think out of his office at the ranger station.
Well, you gotta
Listen-
remember that that's a seasonal road.
That seems to be plowed and people use it.
Well, it is plowed by somebody who is dropping their plow and plowing one path in. You know,
I
Other
have
than
to
that, it's
excuse
used by
myself
snowmobiles.
momentarily. To answer your question, Ardella, the ranger station was my least favorite. Just because of the amount of work and the lack of conversation that we've had at the board level, but to expand upon your question, I see it originally as multi-use and then as potential retail begins to develop or we have other ideas, then that garage portion could be reconverted or repurposed. Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
Gonna use the bathroom.
and Cheryl, I've been working on this thing for the resolution. I'm
Okay.
going to send you a copy of
Okay,
what I've wrote up.
yeah, that'd be great.
That's just strange.
Thinking about the discussion that we just had, and I could make a case or compromise or be convinced that in the situation that we're faced today and trying to capitalize on these funds, that applying for the road this year then gives us the upcoming year, because it seems to me that there will be more debate or more discussion over what is optimal there in terms of a ranger station. And rather than be rushed into something that is either too small or too large, or doesn't really have consensus in terms of what the design or the layout or the function is. There's an interest. I had never really thought of had considered, Della made a good point about, the backside of it being, some secure storage or some, that poses an interesting perspective to me. And so I find myself even thinking that I'm not sure what that would look like. And I would say that's going to take some time to vet out. And so I think it's an important project, but in the sake of getting money, getting a grant request in, I could be convinced, compromised to go for the road this year, working on the building design in 2024, being ready to move forward with a second grant request in 2025 for the ranger station.
Cheryl, what's the book you have?
Township board meetings. Introduction to township board meetings.
So it's not pertaining to this
No,
discussion?
I'm listening to the discussion.
And I'm equally willing to take on the ranger station. But I think that, again, if I remember reading this correctly, we really just need to have a concept down. And I don't think we actually need shovel-ready prints. So we could probably draft up a more residential looking structure than pole barn probably.
That was a concept I'm talking about,
Yeah.
business up front, work in the back.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I can probably, get in touch with a couple of contractors that have designed something for another place. I would not be opposed to plagiarism, if you will, on a ranger station design or something like that. I mean, we know Fleece and Vanderbrink, Gosling Zubek, is that who
Yeah.
Melissa reached out?
Yeah.
C2AE, out of all those firms,
Gordy Fraser.
I think I could come up with a building design relatively easily that we could use as our quote or as our grant submittal.
I've got one or two people I could call outside of
So
the area.
if it is the board's wish or thinking that the ranger station, I like the idea of potential revenue, right? And that pays for those other things that we want to do. So I can see that. So I'd be on board to do something like that if that's what the board thinks. Ranger station?
Ranger station, I think, we can limp by with the road one more year, but where are your people gonna work? Or we take that shed and stick it back in there? Okay.
That is, that's where the plan stops. So it's still undecided.
Right,
Cheryl, ranger station or road or bathhouse?
I think the ranger station is probably the most important out of those three.
Ranger station.
All right, so we're gonna do a ranger station then.
So, for the minutes, is it fair to say there was consensus, to apply for a state of Michigan grant for a ranger station?
An MNRTF grant. So I'll make a motion to begin the MNRTF
Okay,
application.
well, I didn't know you were gonna launch into a motion. Okay, motion to,
Begin the MNRTF application process for a new ranger station.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion?
I would just point out that it's at Whitewater Township Park.
That's. Can we add that in there?
For a new ranger station at Whitewater Township Park.
Please.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Roll call when ready.
Goss, yes. Falmouth is absent. Glenn,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
One other item we've been working on is changes to the electrical system out there. I've met with Consumers Energy, excuse me. They can set a new transformer for us. And Voltage Electric, I think, is providing us with a quote for distribution panels, very similar to what we have out there now. Getting power from the ranger station or from the bathhouse out to the ranger station, the boat wash, the shed, and any parking lot lights that we might want to look into is impractical because of the distance. The new location would be right across really from where the ranger station was on the north side of the road, which would allow us then to take and remove the, what is it, 30 loop from our current distribution panels, reducing the load out there. So those numbers are in work. Like I say, I met with Consumers Energy. They're thinking it's going to be around $10,000 to set the transformer. I don't know what the electrical distribution would be, but I'm sure it's not going to be much less than that. I was hopeful that change order 4 would come through in its totality before this meeting, but it hasn't, to my knowledge. Andrew, if I've missed it, I apologize. But I was hopeful that we could maybe get the transformer set and the new service installed still underneath our budget for the boat ramp expansion. So when I get those numbers together, we'll come back to the board. So it looks like we're gonna be around $580,000 for the project as it stands right now. Yeah, no, that's all right.
Anybody mind if I posted one of these? Front yard here?
I don't have a
No,
problem
no
with it.
problem. I don't
All
have a
good?
problem.
Good.
Thank you.
And
We had all in with contingency was what, 601,
yeah, I think it was a little higher.
610 or 611 maybe? Yeah,
602.3.
okay, so
There might be 20,000
20,
left.
yeah.
There might be.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions for me? On park? Any board comments or discussion? Any public comment? No one in the hall, no one on Zoom. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Roll call when ready.
Bennett,
Yes.
Goss, yes, Glenn,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes,
Falmouth is absent.
11:13. Thank you all.